Hi, welcome back to another episode of Anyone Can Paint. We're going to pick up where we left off doing the Fort Gratiot Lighthouse. Now we got a fairly good sized pine tree that we need to get blocked in here. After that, we'll start putting the highlights on our buildings. This is going to be with some blue and some green. You want this to be pretty dark. And you can put a touch of brown in there if you'd like. And I'm using the number 3 flat bristle brush. And that's positioned somewhere about into here. And I want this to be a little bit taller than these trees, so it helps to push those trees back. So even though in real life this pine tree is not quite as tall as I'm going to make it, it's probably good for the composition. And I'm just going to turn my brush and just start using the corner of the brush and just making some shapes to a pine tree. Hold your hand way back on the handle. Just kind of lightly come in and tap. Just grab some more paint. I'll be right back. This is just in the body of the tree. Don't be concerned with that. Kind of really just make a little bit more focus on the branches that are coming out. And I'm just using the corner of the brush to obtain those. This is a pretty full tree. Just reloading. I'll be right back. Again, I'm just going to reload. I'll be right back. Just grabbing some more blue and green. Maybe a little bit of burnt sienna into that. And again, just kind of really focusing on interesting brush shapes for these branches. In the body of the tree, that doesn't really matter a whole lot. And this kind of tucks behind, so they're going to come up to the lighthouse and stop. And here's my friend the bee again. And we'll clean out the brush, and we've got that blocked out. Now we're going to start working on the highlights on the buildings. I'm going to stay with the number 3 flat brush. I'm going to grab some burnt sienna. Ooh, I caught it. I'm going to add just a touch of blue to it, and a touch of white to lighten this up. And maybe a little bit of red. This is a lighter color. And we'll have to put some windows in here afterwards, but this will get at least the side going here. And this goes right down. Again, don't feel like you got to put this on real thick and cover up all your underpainting. Now I'm going to come over to the next building. This is one that kind of sits back a little bit. And I'm going to clean that out. Over at the doghouse, which is that little building that's attached to the lighthouse, this actually on the side is white. So I'm changing to just white. Right down like this. And right underneath the roof. And I'm going to stop right about to there because there's a back side to this building that goes in, and we're going to need to put some shadows on that. So this is actually going to be the corner of the building. So this is the whole front side right here. And then what I'm going to do to this shadow, now remember the shadow to white, you got to add some blue to this. So I'm going to get a little bit of blue, put it right in that white, and this is going to be the back side of that building. Even though the building is totally painted white, obviously, except for the roof, but this is in shadow. And it's going to go right down the side of the lighthouse. Like that. Then we'll clean that brush out. And while this paint is a little wet that we just did on the light keeper's quarters, I'm going to go in with my #1 script liner brush, and that's a brick building, and I want to give like an indication of some bricks. Now, you don't want to get really, really detailed. You just want to suggest. So you're just going to make that dark color again with some blue and brown. Get it pretty thinned out with some white or with some water. And then you're going to come up, and how you can soften edges up is that you just kind of put them in, then kind of touch them with your finger just to kind of soften them. And you just want to give a suggestion of some bricks. You don't have to paint in every single brick. I'm going to reload, I'll be right back. Because you got to remember what your eye is going to be attracted to, and that obviously is going to be the lighthouse. So this all becomes support material. You're going to notice it, and you're just going to see what it is, and you're going to move back to the lighthouse. Because remember that your eye is always attracted to light colors. There, just an indication. I'm going to do the same thing to this back building. Again, if you put it on a little too thick, just kind of smudge it with your finger a little bit. Oh, I caught him again. I'm going to get zapped one of these times. There, just an indication. Let's go ahead and clean that out. All right, the next thing we need to do is we need to start putting some highlights in our sand. Now we're going to put sand in there first, then we're going to go in and put some of these little scrub bushes and things that are there. So this is going to be, I'm using my #5 flat bristle brush. This is some white, little bit of burnt sienna. And you can make this sand to be whatever color you want. But a cream color generally is a pretty good sand color. Remember, as you get it up here, if you don't like it, you can always change that right on the canvas, or you can paint over it. I mean, so don't feel like, oh, geez, I'm stuck with this color, because I'll show you, for example, if I wanted it more brown. So you just add brown to it, and that will change that up. Kind of gives you the effect like what oil artists do. Oil artists, their paint stays wet for a long, long time. And so they can come up and blend colors right on the canvas for long periods of time, where we don't have that freedom sometimes, but the freedom that we do have is that if we don't like something, you just wait a couple minutes, especially if you're outdoors, and just let that dry, and you can paint over it as if nothing was ever there to begin with. And I'm just going to bring this right up to underneath the buildings and that, and the tree, even though it's not really like that, but when we put in the, when we put in the underpainting for the bushes and the weeds and things, that's where we'll kind of separate that out. But again, just kind of get this blocked in. And again, you don't have to cover up all the underpainting. And while I'm finishing this up, why don't we go back and visit with Lighthouse Bob again, and you can learn a little bit more on the history of this lighthouse. Now, the interesting thing about this lighthouse, now, I have personally been in the Tawas Point Lighthouse, and I assumed, I guess because that was my whole experience, is that the stairway that goes in there goes around the the inside of the lighthouse and obviously tapers as it goes up.
No.
But that's not true, is it, in this one?
Well, you got to remember, first off, no two lighthouses are the same. I mean, 99% of the time, the different engineer designed each lighthouse.
I see.
Because they were far enough apart that the district engineer would get the Navy involved because they wanted to know where it was and that, and they would design the lighthouse, and then the contractor would come in and build it.
I see.
And but in ours here, you got the spiral stairs. There's 94 steps in there, and they stay the same width all the way up. All the tapering is on the outside. The center section is 6 foot 8 inches across, all the way.
You go straight up.
Straight up. There's an iron post in the center. Actually, there's two of them. There's a post, and then there's sleeves that are on that post that the steps are fastened to.
Okay.
And there was no welding. They didn't have welders in those days. Everything is bolted. And then the steps on the other end are set into the brick, almost the width of a brick. It ain't going nowhere.
And so that staircase has got to be the original one, probably?
No.
No?
We're assuming that the original one was wood.
Oh, I see.
And it's kind of interesting now, with this paint peeling and everything, we're discovering where there used to be windows.
Oh.
What they have done, when they built this one, they had a window at each landing in order to give the keeper enough light in the daytime to see to go up and down in that tower without having to carry a lantern. And when they took the wooden stairs out and put the steel ones in, or iron, the configuration came out different, so they had to change the windows to match the landings. It was kind of, it would have been hairy. They, you know, when they had the kerosene lamps, he would take his kerosene up there during the day to last all night. He had that cabinet up there. He would put the fuel can in there, and the tower's not watertight. You get a good rainstorm with wind, you got water coming in and coming down the stairs, and it would be very slippery. And I could just see that keeper going up those stairs, carrying a lantern in one hand and a can of kerosene in the other.
Yeah.
And he slips, fire. So with the windows, he had enough light to see to get up there in the daytime without having to carry a lantern. And something else that came to, I've been here, like I say, for 20 years, and I've learned more as I went along.
Sure.
There's a railing in there, and it's perfect for going up, but it don't work coming down. It's off. You'd actually have to bend over to reach it.
Oh.
And that's so that he had that railing to help himself climbing up the stairs, going up.
Yeah.
Coming down, he could coast. It's you keep finding out more and more about it. You know?
Yeah. You know, the interesting thing is that this lighthouse is 180 years old.
Yeah.
This year. Now, probably like a lot of folks, 180 years obviously in your mind is a lot, but really to none of us, you can't fathom what 180 years are, you know. So I did a little bit of research with this, just kind of like some fun facts. The year that this lighthouse came operational, Andrew Jackson had just become our president. He was the 7th president of the United States. Mm-hmm. So people can kind of think like, geez, I mean, that was a long... And you think about the history that this lighthouse has gone through and all the things that it has seen and witnessed and the changes.
Michigan wasn't even a state when it was built.
Exactly right. You know, the Civil War happened 31 years after that was built. You're right. Michigan became a state 8 years later.
Yeah.
George Washington had died 30 years prior to that being built. I mean, just 30 years. That's, again, Abraham Lincoln was 20 years old and wasn't even close to being a president when that was built. It's just an amazing thing. And then Thomas Edison, who grew up here, as you know, he was only 16 years old when that was built. So hopefully that helps the viewers understand really how long that has been here and all the things that has kind of seen, in a way. It's amazing. Alrighty, in this segment, Bob, I'd like to ask you and get more information about the lighthouse keepers. I mean, obviously they played an important role in the day-to-day operation. And how many lighthouse keepers did the Fort Gratiot have?
We had 23 keepers here.
From the time that it became operational?
It became operational till 1946. The last keeper left here.
And that was because of technology?
At that point, about all he had to do other than wash the windows and paint the tower was go out in the morning and turn it off and go out at night and turn it on again.
Just flipping a switch, basically.
Yeah. Early on, of course, they had to take care of the grounds and the paint. They whitewashed the tower, and that was done with a bosun's chair. And if you know what a bosun's chair is, it's nothing but a board with a rope sling, and then the block and tackle, and he would lower himself up and down, hoist himself up and down the tower to paint it. And before he got an assistant here, I guess he would have to hire somebody from in the town to come over because that whitewash had to be put on hot. And he'd have it in a big kettle down there with a fire under it. And when he used up his bucket, he'd lower the bucket and a guy would fill it and he'd pull it back up. And it took about 2 weeks to paint the thing.
So he'd be dangling from virtually a swing 80 feet up in the air.
Yeah. In fact, I was just the other day, I was looking at the survey that they did for restoration on it, and one of the things that they commented on was that on the gallery up there, there's a cable that goes all the way around, and apparently it doesn't do anything. Well, there's also a chain and a shackle on that cable, and that's what he hooked his block and tackle on to operate his. That way they can run it all the way around the tower.
Hi, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that session with Lighthouse Bob. I hope you're really getting a feel for the man knows his lighthouse, doesn't he? I finished putting in the rest of the highlights on the sand for now. Next thing we're going to do while that's drying is that we're going to put in, the building's got some windows in it, and they're tall windows, a little bit of an arc to the top. So we'll go ahead and put those in right now. This is going to be some white, and I'm using, again, a nylon brush. This is a smaller version. This is probably about 1/4 of an inch. And I'm just going to, and this is a 2-story house. So again, you're just going to kind of suggest, got a little bit of an arch at the top, and then comes down like that. Now we're going to do something else to that. We'll put the dark in there, but this will get us started. And again, this is one of those detail things where if you go back to your studio or into doing this again, where you can spend a little bit more time on getting all your angles correct. And let me use my paint eraser. There we go. But out here, I'm just trying to, again, get a little feel for the building and the architecture and the style. I'm going to put another one in over here. And there's not one in that building. However, since I've got the white, I'm going to hit that doghouse again so it kind of retains its brightness a little better. Remember, the whole side of that, the front side, is white. Now there is a window on that side, and when we do our darks, we'll put that in. All right, let's go ahead and clean out that brush. I think the next thing we'll do is we'll put a little bit of highlighting on that pine tree that we put in. And I'm going to, let's go with a fan brush. This will be a little different. This is my number 1 fan brush. We're going to get some yellow and a touch of blue to it. This will make a bluish green color, kind of a medium green. We'll see how this looks on there. And how I'm using this fan brush is I'm just going to use the corner of it as I put these highlights in. You just want to kind of dabble these in, not covering up all your dark. I'm going to reload. I'll be right back. In fact, I got to make a little bit bigger pile on here. There we go. I made this a little bit lighter, so hopefully it's a little bit easier for you to see. But again, you can see I'm just tapping using the corner of the fan brush. And it's all about how much pressure you hit. If you hit a lot of pressure, you're going to smudge it. So you want to kind of back off a little bit. And the thing to remember with pine trees is that typically you feel like a highlight should come back to about halfway into the tree, and that's not totally wrong. But what happens a lot of times, folks will bring it back to almost exactly halfway, and every highlight comes that way. And what happens is you create a line with your highlights. So to get past that, because that's really not what you want to do, is that as you're putting highlights in, sometimes you go past halfway, sometimes you don't go quite halfway. And that way you get a really irregular shape that your eye will not sit and focus on. Again, remember, as you start to run out of paint, you can always flip to the other corner of your brush because that's got paint on it. Man, this bee. I think it's because I'm so sweet as it hangs around here. Something like that'll work. Alrighty, well, I've got this color. Actually, let me get rid of this because it'll make it too light. We're going to put in some of those bushes and things that are down in the sand area. This is going to be some blue and a little bit of green. And this kind of, there's quite a bit of distance between us and the actual lighthouse. So that's on Coast Guard property, which we can't get onto. So we're just going to kind of suggest this. We're going to bring this up around the front of the building to kind of add a little bit of distance to this. So you just kind of come in here, and you can, I'm going to get a little green with that color. Yeah, that's a little bit better. And if you just kind of push up, you get these little scrubby, weed-like effect. And how you apply these is you want to apply these in the direction that if your sand is on a bit of an angle, like here, the sand actually slopes down from up there down to the water. So in order for you to obtain that look, you want to apply these strokes in that same way where they're kind of coming down like that on a bit of an angle. And we got to put some up in front of this, and that helps to push that building back. And the thing to remember as you're doing this, just don't make these all to be the same size over and over, because then it doesn't look really natural. So you can make some areas that are small. Maybe down here in the corner I'll make a pretty good pile here. There. Maybe come up against that. Because when you put some up against there, you really don't have an idea how far back that is from there, as long as you overlap it. If you don't overlap it, then you're going to get that sense of some distance. But if you've got something in front of that doing that layer effect, then it's hard to tell how far back that actually goes. I'm going to get that back. It's amazing with all the things out here, it's got to stay right around here. And we're going to clean that one up. All right. Next thing we're going to do is I'm going to go back with the script liner brush, and we're going to work on these windows a little bit. We got to put a window on there, and we also need to put a couple windows that we can see that's on the front side, or the side that we're on, of the lighthouse itself. This again is going to be that dark color of blue and some brown. Remember to thin it down, because your liner brush won't work properly unless you got the paint that's thinner. Now within these windows is some dark, and this actually, the white is the frame, the outside trim to this. And so the window is actually shaped kind of like that. And this white is still a little wet, that's why it's turning to gray. So again, that's just another one of those challenges that you're going to have that back in your studio you probably wouldn't have, because if nothing else you could always put a hairdryer on this and make it dry quick. I'm just going to reload. But again, you got to remember that, you know, this is just to get a feel for it. This is to kind of get in the atmosphere and make suggestions. This does not have to be perfect. The one that you do back home, that one needs to be perfect. And this is going to be as far as we're going to get today. I'm going to, as we finish out the show, I'm going to finish putting these in. But thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate